Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about some more NBA news. And this time, it is Doc Rivers going to the Philadelphia 76ers. A couple days ago, we talked about him being fired by the LA Clippers, which to me was a surprising move. And then this move to Philadelphia now is also really interesting to me as well. So we're going to look into this, kind of what this means for the team, what this means for Doc, where both of them are going to go from here, and how this is going to impact the Philadelphia 76ers long term. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day, and leaving a like rating is a great way to help me out. It helps the video out, and it's a great way to let me know that you're enjoying the content as well. And again, I'm going to remind you that I'm going to be live streaming on Twitch really consistently. I've been doing it for the past couple of weeks. It's been going really well, and I'm probably live right now. If you want to come and hang out, talk about Doc, talk about the NBA Finals, whatever you want to talk about, we can do it. Come hang out, come see me on Twitch. With that said, let's go and get into it. Okay, so first up, I have some points that I want to make here in terms of what this means for the Sixers, and then we'll talk about Doc himself. So we'll go positives first, and then we'll talk about negatives. So Doc Rivers as a figure in the league is a really important person. He brings championship experience to this roster. He's incredibly well respected, and generally one of the skills that he has, or at least he's considered to have, is that he relates really well to stars as a former NBA player, and he does a great job of building relationships with those players, bringing those players together and making sure that those stars are happy, which is one of the reasons why it seemed like such an ideal fit for him in LA with all the stars that they did have. So now as we transition to Philadelphia, that attention obviously changes to Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And this is a relationship that is certainly going to define whatever happens to the Sixers over the next couple of years. And there's conflicting reports on where these guys are at. Either they're just kind of coexisting and they're just there and okay with each other, or sometimes they're at odds with each other, or other times maybe, they're doing really well. And I think bringing that relationship together and making sure that those two guys are on the same page is going to be one of the primary reasons that Philadelphia brought in Doc Rivers, and one of the hopes that they have is that he's going to be able to figure out a way to get those two guys, not just to coexist on the court, but to coexist off the court and build those relationships with those players, which again is a skill that Doc has brought to the table in the past. And I also think that even though there's been some limited postseason success lately, and maybe you don't think Doc Rivers is a great coach, the fact that he does have that championship experience, I think does give him a certain amount of credibility with this roster, which is of course really critical. And I think the most important thing about this hire, as opposed to someone like Mike D'Antoni, is that they don't have to change this roster if they don't want to. The roster that they have right now, that they had last season, will work with the way that Doc Rivers wants to coach. Had they brought in D'Antoni, which it seemed like they were kind of leaning towards for a while, they would have had to make significant changes to this roster because of the amount of bigs that they have, because of the size they have, because of the limited perimeter playmaking that they have on this roster. And there are probably going to be roster changes made regardless, but the fact that they don't have to, the fact that it's not necessitated by the coach that they're bringing in, I think is a really critical piece of this. And then last, in terms of positives, is that worst case, no matter what you think about Doc Rivers as a coach, no matter what you think about the 3-1 collapse, no matter what you think about limited postseason success since that 2008 title, I think we can all agree that Doc Rivers is an upgrade at the head coaching position over Brett Brown. And that is no disrespect to Brett Brown. I think that he went through a lot of difficult times in Philadelphia, and the franchise wouldn't even be where it is right now if it wasn't for Brett Brown and for him sticking through the process. But I think we can all agree that whether it be from a relationship building standpoint, you could even go X's and O's, but whatever facet of coaching you want to go through, Doc Rivers is a pretty significant upgrade at each of those spots, at least in my opinion, and I would imagine most people would agree with me there. So those are all certainly some positives for Philadelphia for bringing Doc into their situation. Now, in terms of the negatives, it does hit me as a little bit strange how quickly Doc is jumping into a new head coaching opportunity. That would make me nervous. Like, does he have the energy to jump right back into this after what happened to the Clippers, after the 3-1 collapse, after an unexpected firing in a situation in which you think you're going to be competing for championships and arguably were the favorite to win the title this year, and to have things collapse the way they did and then immediately jump back into a new situation? That would make me nervous. And the other two obvious negatives are, one, there's been limited postseason success lately, never made a conference finals in LA despite the talent that they had on those rosters, and some people just simply don't think that he's a great coach and that he is, an important figure within the league, but maybe not a great coach from an X's and O's standpoint, or whatever. And the other aspect of this is, and this isn't even a negative as it relates to Doc Rivers, it's a negative as it relates to the Philadelphia 76ers in general, this roster still is not great. And then the other part of this that it doesn't even really relate to Doc, but I feel like it needs to be mentioned, this roster still has significant issues. There are good players up and down the roster, and you're looking at, obviously, Joel Embiid's a great player. Ben Simmons is a great player. I think Josh Richardson provides great value with the amount of money that he's being paid as a two-way player. Still needs to kind of find his fit within this roster, but that's something that's a little bit hard to find right now in Philadelphia. Is a player that provides great value for how much they're being paid. I think Josh Richardson is one of those players. But then you've got Tobias Harris, who was massively overpaid and improperly utilized in the past. And then, of course, Al Horford. And how they're going to reshape this roster as a leaner version of what it is right now to not only save them money long term, but to create a better opportunity for this roster to improve over the long term rather than just sticking with these guys. How they're going to remedy that is going to have a way bigger impact on how successful they are over the next couple of seasons than a head coaching change. And that is still a significant issue here. And it's going to be really difficult to move Al Horford for anything helpful. I think it's going to be relatively difficult to move Tobias Harris for anything helpful. And I think that's still something that the front office is going to be looking at and trying to make those changes. So as much of a positive as this could be for Philadelphia, bringing in Doc Rivers, which again, presumably is an upgrade, the roster still has problems. Now for Doc himself, again, I go back to how quickly this happened. And it feels a little bit like someone getting out of a long relationship and then jumping right back into a new one with some new person that they just met. You know, like it feels like maybe there should have been a breather taken here, maybe even taking a full year off, because if this opportunity doesn't work out for Doc, if he's gone from Philly in 2 or 3 or 4 seasons and they don't make the conference finals, he might be doing TV. Like his head coaching career might be borderline over. And that is certainly for him personally a bit of a scary proposition when you're dealing with a situation in Philadelphia that has been pretty volatile pretty much for the last 10 years, right? So that would be definitely a concern if I was Doc. Maybe he felt like this was an opportunity that for him was just too much to pass up. You have certainly plenty of talent on the roster, most notably Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, that have the talent of being all NBA caliber players, even if the fit between the two isn't great. And maybe he looked at the situation and said, yeah, I could wait a year, but maybe something like this won't be available, because I don't think he wanted to go to Houston. Some of the other teams around the league that have head coaching openings right now are probably too young for what he wants to do. And going to Philadelphia, maybe he felt like was just a great opportunity, and he might not be wrong, but still, how quickly he jumped into this new position certainly would make me nervous. And at the end of the day, I really feel like however this Doc Rivers experiment works out, it's the end of the line for whatever Philadelphia has been trying to do for the last however many years. They've changed their front office multiple times. They've changed the roster in significant ways around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid multiple times. And now they've made a head coaching change that many people have been saying has been needed for years and has been holding this roster back. If the Doc Rivers thing doesn't work, I think at that point you have to conclude that there need to be more significant changes made to the roster. And maybe that's the most significant part of this whole situation, is what this could signify moving forward for the 76ers. This is a clear tipping point for this roster. If the Doc Rivers thing works and he's a good coach and this team figures it out and they're perennially winning 55 games and they're competing to be in the conference finals and the finals with this change with Doc Rivers and whatever changes they make to the roster, that's great. If they're still the same disappointing team year after year, I think at that point you're going to need to take a look at some significant changes to the roster, probably involving a Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid trade. And that from a step-by-step standpoint, that's not a bad position to be in, because it creates such a clear causation between, you know, what's wrong with this team and the way the roster is constructed, rather than the head coach, rather than the front office. And certainly both of those positions have made mistakes in the past. But at this point, when you're changing those positions so many times and it still doesn't work, if that's the way it breaks down, you have to consider that your two best players just don't fit together and that it's just not going to work. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but they're in a situation now where this is kind of the last straw. This is the end of the line. If Doc Rivers is head coach and Elton Brand is the general manager and this roster, whatever changes they make to it, doesn't work, I think we're going to see a Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid trade sometime down the road within the next couple of years. However long the Doc thing works or doesn't work out, I think that's what we're going to find out here in Philadelphia, is whether it is the roster or they just needed to make some changes to some more important positions throughout the organization. But yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.